Hello, YouTube. How the heck are ya? This is Around the Stakes, and I am your host, IconicBelow. And today we are talking COD Champs, stats from Champs, what we are looking at for the league, and hashtag Rostermania predictions. Let's break down the winners and losers of COD Champs. First, congrats to Denial, who had won COD Champs and 400k this weekend with the players Clayster, Attach, Replace, and JCap. The big thing about this is Clayster is now the only player to win every kind of LAN. Of course, the other players that are able to do this right now are the players from Optic Gaming that won X Games, so that is Clayster, who's already done it, Nadeshot, who hasn't won a Champs, and Scumpy and Proofy. I feel like Scump is the one who is closest to all of that, but I could be wrong. And Denial played amazing. The only series that they lost was against Prophecy during pool play, and they literally outslayed the entire competition, with having the MVP, obviously Clayster, who had over a 1.15 KD for the second tournament in a row, along with Season 2 KD, which is, I believe, a 1.18. And with his duo Attach, they completely outslayed every team in between those two. Second place was the Dark Horse, Team Revenge, who took home around 200k with the team of Remy, Aqua, Facento, and Nagafen. These teams dominated every team they faced, including big name teams like Mindfreak, FaZe Red, they defeated twice, and Prophecy. Many expected them to be top 8 or top 10. They were one of the bigger dark horses of the entire LAN. I personally expected them top 2, as we heard last week. The crazy thing is, they almost won. They had 2 series go to Game 5 against Denial, and if they won either of them, it would have either started a number 2 best of 5 in the finals, or in the winners bracket finals, they would have been the leader going into the grand finals, which would have been really crazy. Third is the revitalizing of Aches. FaZe Red knocked out some of the best teams, including the favorite Optic Gaming, Prophecy, and many others. They had a crazy loser bracket run, and by far were surprising to most people, especially with Aches stepping up. I feel like Aches was definitely by far the Achilles heel on this team before, and now he stepped up and played out of his mind, well, back to where he's used to, and came out with a crazy finish for them. Fourth was the other surprise team in Prophecy. Embos, Ricky, Mochilla, and Classic turned out to be quite a devastating team. And personally, I felt like this team was going to do pretty good, but I didn't expect them to do this good. I expected like top 8 or so. Fifth was AR with the breakout players that I called, Anticity and Burns. They absolutely dominated teams like Optic Nation, who was expected to finish top 4, and I believe they lost to FaZe Red in the losers bracket. Sixth was Mindfreak with Shocks, Fight It, and Dens. This team would be great to see in the COD League next season. They have some of the players to be successful anywhere. With those 3 slayers, it would be utterly amazing to see them in the NA. Now, before I start breaking down these stats, I want to tell you guys I switched over from maps played to kills per respawn. The reason I did that is I feel like it's a more accurate thing to look at, plus their KD, so it really shows you how many deaths they had in those respawns as well. Like if you look at Clayster, who had a 1.31 and 32 kills per respawn, that puts his deaths at probably about 22 per respawn, which is pretty nice. Whereas just hearing how many maps are played really kind of skews it just a little bit more. At least if you hear how many kills per respawn they had, if it's a player like Apathy who only played 11 maps in NA regionals, we would at least know how well he was playing. As I said, Clayster at a 1.31 and 32.52 kills per respawn. Second was Scump at a 1.3 with 32 kills per respawn. Saints at a 1.25 and 30 kills per respawn. Karma with a 1.21 and 31.33 kills per respawn. And The young god himself, Attach, gets number 5 at a 1.19 kills per death and 29.48 kills per respawn, which is great for him. That was a great step up from what he has been doing. Next up is the breakout player, Anticity, at skipped one. Apathy, who is at a 1.18 and 31.43 kills per respawn. Anticity at a 1.18 and 28.95 kills per respawn. And now we drop down to number 7, Enable, at a 1.16 and a 29.64 kills per respawn. Sinful at a 1.16 with 29.75 kills per respawn. Aqua with a 1.15, 27.96 kills per respawn. Formal, who dropped way down at a 1.14 KD with 29.75 kills per respawn. And Watson with a 1.14 and 29 kills per respawn. Next up is Proofy at a 1.13 with 30 kills per respawn, and Twiz at a 1.13 with 29 kills per respawn. And last is Zuma at a 1.11 and 30 kills per respawn. Next up is... These downright bad teams were a complete disappointment, and it surprised us all. There were more disappointments than this, obviously, like Optic Gaming and things like that, but I don't feel like they were as big of a shock as these two specific teams had most of us downright baffled. The teams of Epsilon and TCM, the two biggest teams from the European Union, failed to get out of pool play, only winning one game each. These teams, many people thought TCM would at least make bracket play. Both of them. They would have made bracket play. With them joining the NA with TCM, they should have placed quite a bit higher. Obviously, their team isn't the greatest, only placing second at EU regionals, but obviously they could have at least placed top 12, which would have been nice. I feel like they could have beat Orbit. They could have beat a few of the other teams that made it through. Epsilon, who won EU regionals, was also put into the pool of death, as most would have said. They had to play some crazy close matches with TK and SB and weren't able to take either win. If they ended up taking both of those wins, they would have been at the top of the pool because they would have went 3-0. They both went 1-2. Obviously, that was their Achilles heel, not clutching up in those S&Ds. Now, I would like to go over what we could be looking at with hashtag Rostermania looming above our heads. There are many top players that are on teams that aren't league teams, such as Team Revenge with Aqua, Nagafen, Vicento, and Remy, and SB with John, Dito, Fizzerp, and Neslo, along with FaZe Black, who actually has two players on Prophecy and Censor and Proofy. And players that may be looking to upgrade, players like Burnsoff, maybe? Who knows? Let's dive into it. Optic Gaming, I feel, before I start this, these are the team changes I feel will happen. And these by far are not 100% guaranteed. And make sure that you guys do not say everything I say right now and take it as 100% fact. These are just my opinions, and I want to entertain you guys with them. So first up is Optic Gaming, which I feel will stay the same, obviously, as Nade, Scump, Formal, and Krim. They have come out and said that nobody is leaving Optic Gaming. FaZe, next up, I feel drops two players. Well, one of them is a drop, and one of them probably is going to get traded away. And they are Parasite, Slasher. They pick up their fill-in Huke as their Slayer, and they obviously need an objective player, and I feel like that objective player by far could be Theory. The reason I feel Theory ends up going to them is I don't feel like TK wants to stick with him, so I feel like he is the player who ends up going to FaZe as that objective player, because obviously Parasite does not want to play that objective type anymore. Next up is Denial, who I also feel stays the same with Clayster, Attach, Replays, and JCap, who just won COD Champs. Obviously, I feel like if they didn't place top 3, they probably would have ended up dropping JCap and picking up maybe Miyagi, somebody like that, just to fill in that void as another Slayer next to Attach and Clayster. I don't feel like JCap could be the solution for all time, but right now, after just winning COD Champs, I don't see them changing right away. Next up is TK with Sharp, Looney, and I feel like they pick up Burnsoff and Nameless. I feel like this could be Burnsoff's big spot after him playing so well at Call of Duty Champs and TK not doing that great. They're definitely bound for team changes. And Looney has been playing out of his mind recently. Gunjar has been playing very, very uncharacteristic. He's been very inconsistent and everything else. And Theory obviously hasn't been doing the greatest as consistency-wise. Next up is Envy, who I feel keeps Merc, Zuma, and Saints and picks up Aches. This was one of the teams that they were trying to get together after the last Rostermania when they picked up Zuma and Saints. They were trying to pick up Aches as well, or maybe all of them ending up on Denial. But obviously, I feel like this team actually happens. Merc wants to play with Aches, Saints wants to play with Aches, and I don't know about Zuma personally, but I feel like this team definitely could happen and actually could challenge if Aches decides to play. Next up is TR, who I feel ends up taking Justice's spot after finishing second. Now, I'm not saying they 100% take Justice's spot with Pittsburgh buying out Justice, but they could. Just saying, they could buy out Justice or one of the other teams in the league, but I feel like they stay the same with Vicento, Aqua, Nagafen, and Remy. They also could be picked up under Justice for the league as well, but I feel like this is by far the best team that isn't on a league team right now and needs to be picked up. Next up is Rise. Personally, I couldn't figure out what they would end up doing just with them not making champs and are actually doing okay. I feel like they stick with Chino, Vexed, Perplexed, and Legal. The only way that they change is a player like Apathy or something like that decides to stick his head out and see if he can get on a better team. Next up is Elevate, who I feel ends up Spacely, Slacked, Huddle, and I feel like they pick up Apathy off Prophecy. Because of Classic not being able to play, I feel like that's going to change just a little bit. Next up is Optic Nation, who I feel ends up TP, Karma. They end up getting Enable from FaZe, and the player that I feel could end up going to Optic Nation as their vocal leader is Sensor. This team really needs a vocal leader, and with TP end up playing that SMG Slayer, Karma could move back to an SMG Slayer. Enable could play his AR Slayer that he was playing on Justice last league season, and then Sensor could be the objective player. This team would be very scary for most players and most teams out there. Next up is AR. I feel like Anticity and Wheats ends up staying there, and they end up picking up Gunjar and Fears. The reason I feel like they pick up Gunjar is obviously they are lacking a major AR, and they need that player just to be able to dominate an AW, but I don't really see them picking up a bigger name player just because they are a lower tier organization. No offense to them, they just don't have the backing that Optic, FaZe, Denial, or TK have at this point. Next up is Prophecy, who I feel is Embos and Ricky staying together, obviously, and picking up Mochilla, who they ended up playing with at COD Champs and Regionals and did utterly amazing, and Improve with Sinful. That puts Embos at Objective Slayer, Ricky and Mochilla at AR, and Sinful at the SMG Slayer. This team could be really devastating if Sinful decides to continue playing. He has talked about retiring and quitting, among other things, but with his team Orbit playing really well and him placing within the top 15 Slayers, I feel like he has more left in the tank. And last, the last team in the league is TCM. I feel like they pick up one player, and they end up sticking with Gunchi, Jerd, and Moose, and end up picking up a player like Swanee. Swanee has already decided that he wanted to come back to the North America. So I feel like if anybody ends up going to a team that is already a EU NA team, he goes to TCM. He's obviously not going to go back to Optic Nation. Optic Nation, the players, Karma and TP, said that they did not want to play with him. He played too slow for their style. So obviously he's not going to go back there. And with Optic Gaming not making any changes, I don't see Swanee going there. Now, as the last thing, I would like to talk about DLC in competitive and my opinions on it. Obviously, after watching Drift S&D in Call of Duty Champs, we need to figure out exactly what we want from this game. So, my opinion is Drift S&D obviously isn't the greatest S&D map, but I feel like we can run 5 or 6 S&D maps. 5 or 6 uplink maps, 5 or 6 hardpoint maps, and make the teams practice these. Obviously, there's other things that we are going to talk about next week and cover, which I feel should be changed, but Drift S&D I feel should stay. Terrace S&D was by far one of the, I feel, the more entertaining S&Ds with the pre-snipes. Just like Drift, there is those pre-snipes and everything else to be watching out for, along with players just going on a crazy flank like Clay did on Terrace. It's just really, really interesting to watch. And S&D Riot, I don't feel is entertaining at all. So I feel like Drift S&D is by far one of the better S&Ds there is. So I hope personally that they don't change it. But I feel like the community itself is going to demand change. Now, with the new DLC being previewed at Call of Duty Champs, there are some maps that are possible to be in the rotation. I feel like Chop Shop would be a cool uplink map. And the high-rise building one, I don't feel is going to cut it at all. And Climate could be a CTF map, or a hardpoint map, obviously. But Climate being a CTF map would be utterly awesome. It's a long enough map to where you're not running back and forth, and could outplace Biolab CTF, which is something we need to replace now. It doesn't play right. Like, you only play one side of the map, which isn't how it should be. You should have to play the entire map in order to control it. You don't want to play one side of the map and then they're like, oh, fuck, we can't sit here and play this side of the map, so we have to go on the crappy side of the map and try and push them out of the way. I feel like if you're playing, you should be 2 and 2 or 1, 2 and 1. 1 going on each side and then 2 going down the middle just to cover the entire map. And that's how most maps definitely should be played. Okay, guys, let's take it out. As always, we will end the show with the things that make this possible. First off, use code ICONIC for Cinch controllers. And if you would like to donate, there is a link down in the description. If you are new here and enjoy the content, please click the subscribe button and make sure you leave your opinion in the comments and like it if you liked the content just a little bit. I will see you all. Peace out.